Hey now, 580 Sports Talk going up on a Tuesday. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you for the next 2 hours today. Yeah, not a 3-hour show today. We are off at 5 o'clock because we've got Kansas State basketball coming up tonight as the Wildcats take on the Cowboys of Oklahoma State, Mike Boynton's group. Pregame begins at 5 o'clock. Tip is at 6 o'clock. Again, right here on 580 WIBW. So a short show for us today. We've got a lot to pack in to the next 2 hours of the program. We'll get to the national championship game in just a matter of moments. What an all-time unbelievable, almost unthinkable beatdown that Georgia put on TCU last night. We'll break it all down. A lot of people have already come out and said, TCU didn't belong there. That could not be more wrong. That could not possibly be more wrong. It is also fair to, at the same time, say they did not have nearly enough dudes to compete with a team like Georgia. Both can be true at the same time.
You can both earn the moment and then not be up for the moment.
Yes, absolutely true. So we'll break that game down here in just a little bit. We've also got some Random Question Tuesday coming your way. We'll talk some NFL Wildcard Weekend coming up at the bottom of the hour. Also, we talked about the coaching carousel quite a bit on yesterday's show. Another step in another job possibly coming open. We'll get to the situation with the Los Angeles Rams and Sean McVay, plus some thoughts on the Wildcard Weekend. I'm sorry. Super Wildcard Weekend.
I'm not calling it that.
Coming up here in just about 25, 30 minutes. Also, later on today, we'll get previews for both KU and K-State basketball coming up tonight. Again, K-State, 6 o'clock, taking on Oklahoma State. KU taking on Oklahoma. That game is at 8 o'clock tonight. Super Tuesday, late tip-off. That game can be seen on ESPN2. Do we know what network K-State is on TV?
Not off the top of my head. I think it's ESPNU. Yeah, ESPNU.
That game deserves better.
Yes, correct. The number 11 team in the country deserves better than ESPNU.
That's lame. But ESPNU on TV for K-State at 6, ESPN2 on TV for KU versus OU at 8 o'clock. We'll preview both of those games. We'll also talk to Michael Swain of Fog.net for our Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence at the corner of Castle and Clinton Parkway. And we've got today's What Is Wrong With You as well. All that and more coming your way in this shortened edition of 580 Sports Talk. As always, you can hit us up with your thoughts on anything we're talking about on the show today. Hit us up on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. That is your text line number. And, of course, hit us up on YouTube as well. The comment section is open. Channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. If you have not subscribed, go do it. The numbers keep going up, stonks up for the YouTube channel. So get in on the ground floor. Sports on 580 WIBW. That is the name of the YouTube channel. Comment section is open, and you can see us live as we are doing the show here in the studio up on Huntoon Hill. Barbara on the YouTube channel, by the way, Dan says, but the weekend is so super. So why not say Super Wildcard Weekend?
There is but one super weekend in the NFL, and it is the one on which we play the Super Bowl. The weekend is not super just because they moved a game to Monday.
A couple years ago, this is going to fall on deaf ears for some people. They, for many years, have done a WWE pay-per-view called Backlash, and that's the one that comes immediately after WrestleMania.
That's a washed enough wrestling reference that even I get it.
So a couple of years ago, they decided to change the name from just Backlash from WrestleMania to WrestleMania Backlash. So they put the name on it twice. That's essentially what this is here. Super. Let's make sure you get it in your mind right away. Super from the very beginning.
Wildcard Weekend. It's Malibu Stacy, but she's got a new hat.
So again, hit us up on YouTube. Hit us up on the Big O Tires text line. Sports on 580 WIBW is the YouTube channel. And 785-272-9429 is the text line number. Let's get into the national championship game from last night. Boy, that game sucked. It was awful, and it was awful it wasn't awful if you were a Georgia Bulldog fan or if you're like Barrett Sally or one of those other weirdos who thinks that anything played outside of the Deep South isn't even real football. Georgia whooped TCU. You can often say, oh, man, this team got destroyed. This team got crushed. They got annihilated. But it's like, okay, they lost by 28. Like, that's pretty bad. But last night was truly, like, demolition. And a program with worse infrastructure might not ever recover from that.
It was the worst loss in the history of bowl games in the history of bowl games, not college football playoff national championship games, not de facto national championship games, bowl games from the Rose Bowl in the 1900s to today, and all of the Poulan Weed Eater Bowls in between, there has never been a beat 'em down in a bowl game like we witnessed last night. I got to ask you this, Brendan. When did you know it was over? When did you know that it was going to be what it ended up being?
First drive.
Yeah.
Because Georgia got penalized twice. That's the kind of thing that, especially for good teams, like you think, oh, we don't need to worry. We don't need to worry about the small stuff. You get penalized a couple times. You have to settle for a field goal, or you don't score early on. You give the other team, the underdog, some momentum. They had multiple procedural penalties on the first drive, and it meant absolutely nothing.
No.
Hot knife through butter does not begin to describe the way the Georgia offense moved on the first drive. And I leaned over to my wife and said, oh no. And that was it. Like, TCU could do nothing all game to stop them.
So TCU got behind the sticks, right? On there, they got the ball first, and they committed a false start penalty before their first down play. They got behind the sticks. That put them in trouble. They had a quick 3 and out. And then Georgia comes out, and they get behind the sticks, not just before their first offensive play, but twice on that drive before first down plays. And it did not matter even a little bit. And when Stetson Bennett IV looked like the fastest guy on the field running in for a touchdown to make it 7-0, I thought to myself, this could be a very long night for the TCU Horned Frogs, because it's not as though, like, TCU was a 13.5-point underdog for a reason. Their formula for winning had to include some of the stuff that happened against Michigan. It had to include winning the turnover battle, maybe even scoring a defensive touchdown. It had to include being firm in the red zone, holding Georgia to 3 instead of 7. And it had to include a lot of splash plays on offense. And they got one. They went behind 10-0 after they turned it over for the first time. And then they got that 60-yard pass to Davis down the sideline on a coverage bust. And they turned that into a touchdown. It's a 10-7 game. And I think people said, well, hold on a second. Maybe this will be competitive after all. And they got nothing remotely like that the rest of the contest. They never looked like scoring again. And the end result is, I struggle to think of a more comprehensive beatdown than that. The only thing that remotely compares is what the Cowboys did to the Bills at the Rose Bowl in the Super Bowl, and what the Seahawks did to the Broncos Super Bowl 48. Those are the only two. I guess USC Oklahoma is the nearest college parallel I can draw. The 2004 BCS title game.
Yeah.
USC dropped a double nickel on Oklahoma, but I still think this outstrips them all. They scored 65 points in a championship game.
It could have been worse.
Yes. Like, no, they were driving for 72 with their third string in. Like, if there had been more time on the clock, yeah, they would have scored.
And to be fair, because I don't think most people felt this way, and they talked about it during the broadcast. I do not blame Georgia one bit. Like, you don't let up in the national championship game. Like, you go full bore and you put on as many points as you possibly can. It is the final game of the season. It is the national title game. You don't let up. I don't think they were running up the score. They
put in their backups and still scored like 2 touchdowns with reserves.
And met absolutely no resistance at all. You could also tell, and I mentioned this watching the game too, that TCU had that touchdown drive early and on the broadcast, and I can understand why. If you're Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler and you're people who are paid to cover this game, I can understand why you would be saying, oh, here come the Frogs, down by 10 early in the game, right where they want them. The only reason TCU moved the ball at all is because Georgia had a defensive back just not cover a player. They said, we got to focus on Quentin Johnson that much. So they just left a guy wide open for however 50 yards, whatever it ended up being. And then Duggan had a nice run one play after. I mean, can you name another good offensive play for TCU?
They had a couple of strong runs between the tackles with DeMercado, who's a good player. I know that Kendre Miller didn't play. I don't think that mattered. I think they could have brought prime LaDainian Tomlinson in to play running back.
Yeah.
And it would not have mattered.
I did feel bad for Kendre Miller. Like, you do so much all year, all Big 12 season, and you don't even get to play in the title game. I'm sure that sucked for him.
It's a bummer. But like I said, they never looked like scoring again. And it goes to show you the difference and where it just underlines where we are in college football right now. Because I know when you looked at Georgia getting to last night, they needed a missed 50-yard field goal to survive against Ohio State. But here's the thing. Ohio State is one of two other teams in the country that could go man for man, dude for dude with Georgia. Just in terms of size and speed and just raw football ability. There are but 4 teams every year, if that many, that can realistically stand up and say, we've got all this blue chip talent. We've got our second unit is maybe as good as an average team's first unit. We got 5 stars chilling on the bench. And it doesn't always happen this way in college football. But when you think of the all-time great teams, the teams that have either repeated or come within a hair's breadth of repeating in the last 20-odd years, Alabama, I think did it twice, or no, they only won one in 19 and 20. They only won the one in 2020.
Yeah.
They did repeat in 2011, 2012. USC 0405, Miami 0102. Like, those were teams that had NFL guys who couldn't get off the bench. And that's what you're dealing with the Georgia Bulldogs. And there's 2 or 3 teams in the SEC in any given year, and Alabama's always one of them, that have that kind of ability. And then there's Ohio State. And that's really it. If you want a fair game in the national title game, those are the terms on which it had better be played. Otherwise, you get Godzilla versus Bambi, which is what we watched last night for 60 minutes.
24/7 Sports has a metric, a ranking metric. It's the team talent composite. And it's based on recruiting metrics and 5 stars, 4 stars, their yearly grades, all of that. So it's not perfect, obviously, but it's essentially how talented is every roster in major college football. And they rank them out. For 2022, here's their top 3. Alabama, number 1, Georgia, number 2, Ohio State, number 3. The teams that going into the year, everyone said those are your 3 best teams in college football. Alabama didn't quite live up to that, but you understand they're still really darn good. Those are your top 3. There are 2 Big 12 teams in the top 10, which is very funny that Texas and Oklahoma, 2 of the biggest underachievers in the entire country, both top 10.
Because it's not just about that, right? Like,
no, it's not just
because if it were, you could just seed the playoff based on 24/7 Sports recruiting rankings and play those games. Now you have to earn it. You have to, you get it out the mud, and you have to perform in a way over the course of your regular season. But when you do have a program that has that level of talent and that level of coaching and that level of player development machinery that Georgia very clearly has, what can you do? You're in trouble.
And by comparison, so those are your top 2 Big 12 teams in the talent composite. Oklahoma is 9th. That's the second best Big 12 team. The next highest ranked Big 12 team in the team talent composite is TCU, 32nd in the country. That is directly behind the 3 teams in front of them: Mississippi State, Georgia Tech, and Missouri. Okay? We think of Missouri as like a very middling SEC East team. They're middling in the weaker of the 2 SEC East or SEC divisions. And the 3rd best team in the Big 12 is behind them in terms of that. Now, again, that's not everything. Coaching, Sonny Dykes, National Coach of the Year, obviously deserved. That plays a big role in it. Development, the infrastructure of your program, the money behind your program, things like that all play a major role in that. But you've used the phrase many times, the want to. I'm not saying that TCU as a program, as a fan base, as an institution doesn't want to be successful. They absolutely do. But we did this last year when Georgia won the national championship. We looked at the staff for all of these schools that were in the playoff and like good staffs in the Big 12. We looked at KU and K-State compared to Georgia. Georgia has like 200 plus people listed as their like athletic football staff, from your quality control coaches to your offensive analysts, right down to like 18 different nutritionists on the team. KU and K-State, Power 5 football. K-State's been a great program for 3 decades at this point almost. K-State had like 50 people, which seems like a lot. Like, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it ain't 200 that are doing it at Georgia or Alabama. Ohio State is the same way. Michigan is increasing that same kind of thing. TCU deserved to be there because they had an amazing season. 13-1 going into the game. They were undefeated in the regular season. Their only loss came at a neutral site to a top 10 team in overtime. They deserved to be there.
And they caught Michigan's probably a better team. Michigan, TCU play 10 times. Michigan probably wins 8, maybe 9. But TCU caught them on an off day and took advantage of all of Michigan's mistakes, and they won that game. They earned it. They didn't lose a regular season game. Alabama lost too. I know there are a lot of people, even some in my Twitter mentions last night, saying, "Oh, you want a better playoff? You should put Alabama in instead of TCU or whatever." No, the regular season still has to mean something. Trust me, if you want to see it be just the 4 teams with all the talent in the world at the end, just wait till they expand this puppy to 12 teams. And that's exactly what you're going to get. If you want Alabama in this thing every year, you're going to get Alabama in this thing every year. If you want it to be Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State in the semifinals with one interloper a year, if that's what you want, you're getting it. You're getting it starting as soon as the 12-team playoff comes to be. The smaller the playoff, the more of a chance you have to be able to have said, hey, we earned this in the regular season. That SEC team, yeah, they got all the talent in the world, but they stubbed their toe twice. TCU lost 1 game in overtime after going 12-0 in the regular season. You can't say that they didn't belong in a 4-team playoff. But they couldn't hang with the Georgia Bulldogs unless everything went right. And everything went wrong. Max Duggan had his worst game of the year. They were -3 in the turnover department, and Georgia just beat him until there was nothing left to beat. They left him like a grease stain on your garage floor.
One of the biggest differences between most conferences in the SEC, and this does come down to recruiting and infrastructure and things like that. In the Big 12, there's some good offensive lines. TCU had a good offensive line. All year, TCU had a very good offensive line. Their dudes are big and they're strong. But you know what Georgia's big dudes are? Big and strong and also fast. And
Jalen Carter got another early in the game, oh boy, TCU's in trouble moment, was Jalen Carter getting to the edge on a wide receiver screen to make a tackle. Like, that's why he's going to be a top 3 pick in the NFL draft. TCU does not have that guy.
No, and that's just the difference. And again, like I said at the very top of the show, you can have multiple things be true at the same time. It is true that TCU had a fantastic season and deserved to be there. They earned that trip there. And if you thought going in, this team doesn't really deserve it, then they went and beat Michigan, who everyone said was destined to play Georgia in a rematch of last year's playoff in this year's title game. Well, they beat that team. TCU deserved to be there. There is no reasonable doubt about that. You can also say Georgia had probably its best game of the entire season. There were a few moments during the year, like the Missouri game stands out, a couple other games where they kind of messed around. But you saw, like when they played Tennessee, when they played in the SEC championship game, when they wanted to turn it on, they could turn it on and they could beat absolutely anybody in the country. They probably played their best game of the entire season. And TCU just doesn't have the dudes. You can earn it and still not have the dudes, the team speed to beat a team like that. And I said all year from the first game when Georgia dismantled Oregon, said,
who ended up the number 15 team in the country, by the way.
Really dang good season. And I said it multiple times. They're playing a different sport than the rest. Like, everyone else is playing football. Georgia is playing something else.
And that was a lesser version. What we saw last night was a lesser version of the Georgia team, at least on defense, than we saw to start the season.
Correct.
Their star safety, Dan Jackson, was out. Their best pass rusher linebacker, Nolan Smith, was out. They just found more guys to fill those roles to the point where it didn't matter at all. And I see we got some comments on the Big O Tires text line from the 785. After that beatdown, the TCU coach doesn't, I think is what the point is being made here, doesn't deserve coach of the year. His team was not ready. We have another one who says from the 785 was like Georgia had TCU's playbook. I would object to both of those. I think TCU was absolutely ready to play. They were not capable of hanging with Georgia if Georgia played their best football, and Georgia played their best football. Like that's what you saw. When the best team, when the best coach team, when the team with the most talent plays their best football, they will beat anybody. Georgia could have beaten anybody in the history of college football last night. Line them up. Mid-90s Nebraska, 70s Oklahoma, 2000s Miami, 2000s USC. Line them all up in front of that Georgia team last night. I don't think any of them win or stand a chance.
Two questions for you that are not directly pertaining to that game, but do pertain to Georgia. This Georgia team or 2019 LSU?
This Georgia team, better on defense.
Interesting.
And obviously that LSU team, unbelievable offense. Joe Burrow maybe had the greatest season for any college quarterback ever, and just freaks at wide receiver. But Georgia has two refrigerators playing tight end. And a bunch of speed at wide receiver. Like A.D. Mitchell was a stud who didn't play all year because Georgia could just afford to say, hey, man, just get your ankle right. We'll see you when we see you. And they got him for late in the season. He made big impact in the playoff. Look, man, Stetson Bennett IV is a great, like an all-time great college quarterback. I think we have to say that now. 2 national titles. He's an all-timer. And not just right place, right time, like legitimately outstanding. Legitimately, they played 4 playoff games, Georgia, in the last 2 years. He was the offensive player of the game in all 4 of those games. Like, he wasn't a passenger.
Nope. No, he was great in all of them. He tied Joe Burrow's record for touchdowns accounted for in a championship game. He was efficient, only turned the ball over 1 time. He was great. 2-time champion at an SEC team, back-to-back champion. And guess what? He can't get into the College Football Hall of Fame.
Is that right?
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
He was never an All-American.
Huh.
You have to be an All-American to be put in the College Football Hall of Fame. Just like Mike Leach can't get in because he was 1 win short of a 600 career winning percentage. Stetson Bennett, all those accolades. Some former Bulldog. I saw Aaron Murray say this today. He's the best Bulldog of all time, which I don't know if is 100% true. But he's in the conversation. Can't get in the College Football Hall of Fame. How ridiculous is that?
The other big advantage, by the way, that Georgia would have over that 2019 LSU would be on the sideline. Like Kirby Smart runs circles around Ed Orgeron.
You know what the funny thing about that LSU team is? Like, and this tells you a lot about the quarterback himself. He was an old last year of college player, but he was still obviously very young. Joe Burrow pretty much coached the offense. Like him and their offensive coordinator, Joe Emsinger, who never got all the credit. Joe Brady got the credit for that offense. It was Emsinger who really was the mastermind behind it. Like Burrow was out there calling his own plays. Like he was truly running that offense, which is truly amazing. Here's the other one. I saw this on Twitter last night. Last question, then we got to get to a break. We all know it is very stupid to say, could the best college team beat the worst NFL team? Like, no, the Houston Texans would beat Georgia by probably multiple scores.
Yes.
Because all the Texans are NFL players. A good number of the Bulldogs are NFL players.
Yeah, exactly.
Could the Georgia Bulldogs beat an XFL team?
Yeah.
I think that, especially a bad one, I really do think they could.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those guys aren't NFL caliber players.
Yeah, why they're in the XFL. No, they'd have more high-end talent than the XFL team, and they'd be better coached.
Yeah, coaching makes a difference. There's a reason those guys are coaching in the XFL.
Yeah.
I saw that on Twitter. I was like, they probably could.
One last thought on this. It's really hard to repeat, as evidenced by the fact that Georgia's only the second team to do it in the last 12 years when we've thought there could be a lot more repeat champions possibly. But just gird yourself. Georgia's going to do this again next year.
Their schedule is a joke.
Yeah, they don't play anybody good.
Including Alabama.
Yeah, they don't play Alabama. They're going to go 12-0. Probably end up playing Alabama in the SEC championship game. Win or lose, who cares? They're still in the playoff. And, they're going to do this again. I don't see what stops them. Because I think the only thing that can stop a program like this is complacency, and Kirby Smart does not allow that within a zip code of what he's got cooking in Athens.
He really took so much. I mean, he's clearly a great defensive coach. We knew that already, but we knew that when he was at Alabama. But he picked up so much in terms of motivation from Nick Saban. Having future top 20 NFL picks after the game telling ESPN, people thought we were going to be 7-5. Nah, dude, people thought you might go 10-2.
Right.
Like on a bet, if your year went poorly, you'd go 10-2 and win the Sugar Bowl.
They were number 1 for half of the season. Does Kirby have a media embargo in the locker room?
He might.
Do they have like a North Korean style Georgia media that they just pump into the locker room? The Bulldogs ranked 19th again in the polls.
Just lying all season long. We do have to take a time out here on 580 Sports Talk. When we come back, we've got some Random Question Tuesday, and we'll get to more NFL news and notes later on this hour here on 580 Sports Talk. Random question Tuesday here on 580 Sports Talk. Dan, what is your go-to order when you go out for breakfast or brunch? It could be like you always go to a similar place. You always get the same thing. It can just be once I see this on the menu, I'm ordering it. What would it be?
So it depends on like the place. Sometimes the greasy spoon type places. Sometimes it's good to just get the egg and pancake breakfast, whatever they call it. Some of the more like upscale breakfast places or chain breakfast places every now and again like to do maybe a waffle or something like that. But my favorite thing to get for breakfast is I'll give you one or two. Number one, like a big Belgian waffle.
Okay.
Just a big waffle with fruit and syrup and, maybe a side of bacon. And the other would be so there's a place back where I grew up, the Denver Biscuit Company, and they've got
sounds like my kind of place.
They got a breakfast sandwich. It's a biscuit, right? Biscuit and gravy, but in between that has the biscuit, we've got like fried chicken and a fried egg and some hash browns and some sausage and cheese, and it's just fabulous. You eat it with a fork and knife, and it's wonderful. So
that sounds really good.
Yeah, so like a big decadent breakfast sandwich or a waffle would be my go-tos.
Man, food questions are great questions because people like to listen to those, and it's always a good discussion, and then it just makes me hungry in the middle of the day. So I actually had one of those pancake, egg, and bacon plates the other day. Abby and I went out and got brunch on Saturday. That's what elicited this question. My usual go-to is just French toast. Like I love French toast, and I will eat it anywhere. So I like to see who has good French toast, who doesn't, or biscuits and gravy. Or in some cases, shout out to the Roost in Lawrence on Mass Street downtown. I will get a half an order of French toast and a half an order of their mushroom biscuits and gravy. Oh, to die for. Absolutely delicious. So yeah, some combination of biscuits and gravy and French toast is the move. And if I can add bacon, I will add bacon. Always.
Salt. Yeah, I always try and get a side of bacon. We got a vote in here from the 620 on the Big O Tires text line for Eggs Benedict. Man, I like Eggs Benedict a lot. That was one of those, like, I didn't expect to like it, and then I tried it. I'm like, nah, man, Eggs Benedict is awesome.
I don't love eggs. Like, I know they're in so many meals that you eat, and I like scrambled eggs enough, but other than, like, I'm not a big eggs guy, so I've never gotten too into Eggs Benedict. Because I just see...
Man, well done poached egg.
Yeah.
The hollandaise sauce. Big shout to, the Eggs Benedict. Also, it's specifically from the Big Biscuit is what is being referenced here from our texter in the 620.
Good
call. We got a Big Biscuit just down the street here.
Yeah.
They not only have a very good waffle, but they also have just about the same breakfast sandwich I described from the Denver Biscuit Company.
There you go.
They have a reasonable facsimile. So every time I go there, and it's a favorite of my in-laws, so I've been there a handful of times, it's very hard for me to choose.
Big Biscuit folks, reach out to Dan Lucero on the Big O Tires text line.
Yes, absolutely. I will shill for you guys, no problem. Hey, my random question Tuesday for today relates a little bit to last night's football game. What is the single worst loss you have ever taken? It doesn't even have to be in sports. Like maybe you lost in Uno and like 2 cards or something somehow. But what is the single worst loss? The single most one-sided defeat you can recall?
Anytime growing up that my friends were like, oh, let's play Call of Duty. Is I like video games. That's not my kind of game though. Like I like a party game or a sports game mostly, or like, a solo, like Pokemon. Like I like those kinds of games. Anytime I'm like, oh, let's play Call of Duty. Let's play Halo when I was much younger. No, I'd get my ass kicked every single time. Like they weren't competitive. I never had fun, but I don't like to disappoint people. So I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll play. Miserable. I don't have a specific instance. It's just anytime we would play those, it sucked and I hated it and I would lose badly.
Yeah, I have a video game story like that. My best friend growing up had Ken Griffey Jr. baseball for the N64, and he would just always use a knuckleball pitcher against me, and I had no chance.
So when I was in high school, we had a radio station. That's how I got started doing radio, and we had this lounge area. It was real nice. We had couches and a TV and all that. And one day after school, I used to spend my afternoons and evenings there at least 4 days a week, working or hanging out or whatever. And a friend of mine brought his PlayStation 2 one time. and I might have been MLB like 08 or 07. It was some early version of the show. And he had clearly been playing like every day for years.
Mm-hmm.
I said, yeah, no, that sounds fun, man. I'll play. I think he threw a no-hitter and beat me like 24-0. I thought, why did I agree to this? Why didn't I just turn it off after 3 innings? This is not fun.
I don't know that I ever scored a run against Kyle playing Ken Griffey Jr. baseball. Usually it was like Steve Sparks, like just some no-name dude. But he had a knuckleball. He just knuckleball. I couldn't touch it. I could not touch it. It wasn't my home system. I was a PlayStation guy. But, yeah, he would just abuse me. My real-life example, I started a game on the mound against our big rivals, Cherry Creek, my senior year. And I think I retired the first 4 batters. Then I gave up a dinger, and it went real south from there. I think I gave up 8 runs and 2 1/3, 2 2/3. That was a tough one. Thankfully, we did not get swept by them. We came back and beat them a few days later behind our number 1. But that was a tough one to take. That's one that still stings.
I narrowly avoided something similar. It wouldn't have been like I lost 80-0 kind of thing, but I once growing up played against my best friend's little league team when he was on the mound. I think like my team, we didn't have enough guys or something. So I think we didn't even play an official game. We had to have like kids' brothers come on and play with us because not enough kids showed up. And so we were already like playing different positions than we normally play. Like they put me at shortstop for some reason. And my best friend, Evan, on the other team, who I've brought up many times on the show, he's the one who works for Stats Inc. He was pitching, and we were just kind of laughing at each other as I was walking up to the plate. And in our minds, we've talked about this since, like, if he gets me out, I will never live this down. I have to get a hit. And he got 2 strikes on me. And, brother, when I tell you it was not even close, I was like 8 feet in front of each pitch. Thankfully, I hit a 2-strike double to survive and keep my dignity. But yeah, that would have been my worst of all time because I would still, what would it be, like 16 years later be hearing about it? No doubt. We're going to take a break here on 580 Sports Talk. On the other side of this timeout, though, we'll talk some NFL Super Wildcard Weekend and some big news coming out just within the last hour. A big name from the NFC West, possibly on the trade market, and a big name coach from the NFC West might be done with the game. We'll talk about that next on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you for 580 Sports Talk. Shortened edition of the show today. We are off at 5 o'clock for K-State basketball. Couple entries in the YouTube comments for the worst loss you've ever taken. One commenter just says card games, like Hearts. I used to play Hearts on the computer all the time. I never really understood what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I was kind of good at it.
I remember playing Hearts because you got tired of solitaire.
Yeah.
And then you didn't really know how to play. Yeah. I remember that.
Another one here says, I get beaten on any gaming system that is not Nintendo or a PC. Yeah, pretty much. Like, you give me the PS2 or a PlayStation and Madden, like, I'll hold my own. You give me anything else, no, it's going to go south. It's not going to go well.
Very respectable if I've got the home console, but you put an Xbox controller in my hand, forget about it. I got nothing for you.
Some big news from the NFL today. A couple of headlines we'll get to here. Number one, this just breaking, although I'm not surprised. I don't know if I brought this up on the air. I think we did talk about this at one point. I've talked about this with some buddies of mine. I have a friend who's a huge Bears fan and wants them to just go nuts this offseason. They've got the money and the draft picks to do it. But according to Jordan Schultz of The Score, who's become one of the big NFL insiders over the last 2 years or so, sources indicate the Cardinals plan to try to trade all-pro wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins this offseason. He has 2 years and $34.4 million left on his contract and is likely seeking a new deal. Owner Michael Bidwill plans to express this to general manager candidates. The reason I've talked about this with my friends is because I think this actually makes a ton of sense for the Chicago Bears. That seems like the perfect team that would be into something like this. I'm trying to think the other team that needs a wide receiver badly that has a lot of cap space, the New England Patriots, which this doesn't feel super like a Patriots move, but also what better way to give Mac Jones a chance to prove it than to get him one of the 10 best receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, he didn't miss a beat this year. He had the 6-game steroid suspension and then came back and just was as awesome as he's always been, even making catches and putting up numbers when he had Trace McSorley and David Blau throwing him the football. So, yeah, there's clearly plenty left in the tank, and the Bears make a lot of sense.
Looking at the teams that have the most cap space, in fact, there's a bunch of them, although one I don't think will work because they got to sign their quarterback. Top 5 teams in order of cap space. The Bears are number 1. They have $113 million open. That's absurd. Number 2 is the Giants. They could use a wide receiver. No matter who their quarterback is, they need a wide receiver. Number 3, the Falcons. I think they're still too far into a rebuild to make a move like that. Number 4 is the Patriots. Number 5, the Baltimore Ravens. I think Lamar is a better passer than he gets credit for. I don't think he is an elite thrower. He's an elite athlete for sure. I don't know that he's an elite thrower, but I would love to see him with a real wide receiver who's not the corpse of Sammy Watkins or Devin Duvernay.
Is Lamar coming back to Baltimore?
I don't know. I have no idea.
That's my big question about Baltimore. Like, that would be enticing for Lamar Jackson, but are they ready to move on? Are they ready to just, like, I don't think they're going to fire John Harbaugh or anything like that, but it does feel like that their offensive operation needs a new coat of paint. Like, they definitely need to move on from Greg Roman. Like, that has to happen. But beyond that, do they start over again at quarterback? I would think you would rather just pay a guy who's already won an MVP and is one of the more unique offensive weapons in the game, is a better passer than a lot of people are willing to give him credit for, and still a dynamic running threat. Yeah, I would keep him, but maybe they don't. And if they don't, then why would you add a wide receiver for
that's a great point.
Snoop Huntley or whoever they're going to have quarterback up next year?
No, that is a tremendous point. Honestly, if I'm the Ravens, you've got another year of J.K. Dobbins under contract. So you've got your really good running back, and they've got tons of depth. You sign Lamar, get him a real wide receiver or two, and I think that could be really good offense. Also, get rid of Greg Roman because he has gone staler than old bread. Also, from the NFC West today, teased this a little bit earlier on. This is according to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, and I want to make sure I get the exact wording down here to be specific with the report. Is Rams coach Sean McVay, whose future is in limbo, has permitted his coaching staff to search for other jobs without resistance, per sources. McVay said in a staff meeting he does not know what he will do next year and won't block those who want to explore opportunities. Teams can no longer block position coaches from interviewing for coordinator jobs, but they can block lateral moves. The Rams will not be doing that. One, That's a good move by McVay. I'm not going to say classiest move of all time, but that's the right thing to do if you don't know. But also, if you don't know at this time of year, that says to me he's walking away. And at this point, I am expecting him to walk away more than I'm expecting him to return. Their offensive coordinator's already gone. Liam Cohen
went back to Kentucky.
Yeah.
Which
feels like, the first wave of birds migrating, like, oh, winter's coming.
Yeah. Like, he left Kentucky to go get an NFL gig and then not even a lateral move, went back to Kentucky. Like, I know the SEC pays well, but Kentucky, it's not Alabama. So, yeah, that to me is a pretty clear indication that Sean McVay, I just feel like his heart isn't in it anymore. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You made your money. You won your ring. You made an imprint on the game. Go do something that makes you happy.
And if you want to come back, guess what? Someone will pay you ungodly money immediately.
Maybe even the Rams.
It might be. It certainly might be. Yes, there's your big news from the NFL today. Also, the Washington Commanders fired their offensive coordinator, Scott Turner. I think that needed to happen. I don't think that's going to fix all their problems because you could have the best scheme in the world, but at the NFL level, if you don't have a quarterback, you're toast. And Sam Howell was fine in Week 18, but is that your answer? Is that what you're putting all your eggs? Is that the basket you're putting all your eggs in?
That can't be your answer. Like a Howell Heineke quarterback competition for next year. Like, they've got a defense that's probably close to playoff caliber.
Yeah.
And I like their running game. Like, they've got something with Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson.
Hell, I like their receivers.
Yeah. Terry McLaurin is elite.
Yeah. You've got multiple guys. Hell, Logan Thomas, the tight end, isn't, he's no slouch either. They just don't have a quarterback.
They really gave the keys to Carson Wentz for a year.
Yeah. Well, not even. He lasted 5 games this year? Got hurt. Came back for one game, was just as bad as ever. Sheesh.
That's a team that I don't know if anybody's bringing them up in the Derek Carr sweepstakes, but people maybe need to.
It would make a lot of sense. They will not be playing during Super Wildcard Weekend, but we do have 6 games, 2 Saturday, 3 Sunday, 1 Monday as well, which means if you're the gambling type, a lot of opportunities to win some money this week.
Yeah, you can call your own plays during the NFL playoffs with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because when you bet NFL same-game parlays from now through January 16th, all customers can get up to $100 in free bets, win or lose. All you have to do is place a total of $20 or more on SGP or SGP plus bets during the wild card round. The more you bet, the more you get back in free bets. NFL same-game parlays are the perfect way to combine your bets for a chance at a larger payday. So, for instance, what about Saturday's game, the Seahawks and the 49ers? Right now, that's a 10.5-point spread. Maybe you like the underdog, so you put a little bit on the Seahawks to cover that 10.5-point spread. And if the Seahawks are going to win, they're going to need some touchdowns. Maybe you think Tyler Lockett will find the end zone, so you bet on him for an anytime touchdown, and maybe Geno Smith over on his passing yards. You could build your own or choose from one of the popular SGPs pre-built for you in FanDuel's top-rated sportsbook app. If you're new to FanDuel, you can also get up to $100 in free bets, win or lose, when signing up with my promo code Lucero. That's Lucero. Make sure you put that in at sign up and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. You must be 21 and present in Kansas. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable free bets. It expires 7 days after receipt. Max free bet $100. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
You know, do a little money line sprinkle on your Seahawks this weekend?
I'm very tempted. I may as well, right?
It could be your last chance to bet on them this year.
I did say adamantly when Brock Purdy took over as the starting quarterback that I could not wait to bet against him in a playoff game.
This is your chance.
This is my chance.
By the way, to deviate real quick, and again, we don't have headlines brought to you by Blue Dot coming up today because we're off early, so we'll just get to a couple real quick ones here. In the latest example that nepotism means a whole lot more than talent when it comes to coaching in football, specifically at the college level, Lincoln Riley today at a press conference announced that USC is keeping defensive coordinator Alex Grinch for another season. Alex Grinch had one above-average year at Washington State and has been terrible everywhere else he's been. His other years at WSU, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and now at USC. He has been awful. His defenses have been terrible. And yet Lincoln Riley would rather keep his friend than actually win games. That is all you have to know about Lincoln Riley. That is all you have to know about most coaches in college football. Honestly, except Kirby Smart. Did you see that quote? I think we brought it up the other day, in fact, from Todd Monken, where he said, hey, look, Kirby and I get along, but I know if our offense does not play well, he's going to fire me. Like, I understand the level of football we're playing at. I wish I was friends with Lincoln Riley. I'd never lose my job. I'd be safe forever. I could fail every day. I wouldn't even have to show up. Lord knows they didn't in the Pac-12 championship game.
Yeah.
Or, hell, in the Cotton Bowl against Tulane either. We've got to take a break here for the national and local news at the top of the hour, but when we come back in the 4 o'clock hour, we'll preview KU versus OU tonight. We'll preview K-State versus Oklahoma State. We've got What Is Wrong With You, and we'll have Jayhawk Weekly brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery with Michael Swain. It's all next hour on 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. It's the final hour of the show today. We are off an hour early because of K-State basketball. Pre-game at 5 o'clock, tip at 6, live from Bramlage Coliseum in Manhattan. K-State takes on Oklahoma State. We'll preview that game coming up here in just a few minutes. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero on this Tuesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Dan will be there tonight for K-State Hoops. So he will be taking off after What Is Wrong With You before we talk to Michael Swain today. We'll get your thoughts on that game coming up in just a moment. Should be a fun one. Mark in the YouTube comments says Bramlage is going to be jumping tonight.
They sold it out.
Go K-State. That's awesome. What is that now? 6, I think, scheduled sellouts for K-State basketball?
They've got, I think it's 9 home games left, maybe 8. Let me think. Yeah, they've already played 1 conference home game. So they got 8 left, and then the Florida game's a home game. So they got 9 home games left, and they've announced sellouts for 6 of the 9.
That's pretty cool. That's really, really, really cool. And I'm happy for them.
Yeah, and historically, the 6 p.m. midweek tips are not the easiest games for everyone to get to. If you were coming from, maybe somewhere else, somewhere outside of Manhattan, to get off of work and get to Bramlage in time for a 6 p.m. weekend tip is not always the easiest thing. Also, you have the factor of this being another game where the students are not in session. Still in all, they are anticipating a sellout at Bramlage tonight, and I think that joint is going to be jumping.
I don't know when students return. I don't know when classes resume. Next week?
I think it is.
There's probably a lot of students, especially older ones, who are in town now. I would imagine so. If they're like me, when I was a senior, I thought, I'm gonna get back to Lawrence. I'm good. I'm good at hanging out at home. I'm gonna get back a few days early. So that'll be awesome tonight. KU in action tonight, 8 o'clock tip at Allen Fieldhouse. I will be there for that game in Lawrence. We'll preview that coming up, of course, with Michael Swain and just the two of us here in just a moment. And we've got What Is Wrong With You coming up this hour as well. Whole lot to get to between now and 5 o'clock. Don't forget, you can hit us up with your thoughts on anything we're talking about today, either in the comments section on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is our channel. Go subscribe if you have not as of yet. It's free. All you have to do, click a button, and then you are subscribed to us, and you'll see all of our videos right there on your homepage. And, of course, as always, the Big O Tires text line is open to you as well. 785-272-9429. That is the text line number. Let's get to the basketball coming up tonight. Both of the top 11, that's very, peak SEC bias ESPN coverage. The top 11 teams in the country include both KU and K-State. Let's start with KU. Number 2 team in the country taking on Oklahoma, an OU team that just picked up its first Big 12 win earlier over the weekend, beating Texas Tech. A Texas Tech team that suddenly has its back against the wall, desperately needing a win in conference play. This is a matchup I think KU should be able to win. I'm not going to say win easily, but I think should be able to win. The spread at one point was 9.5. I saw it at 10 somewhere else as well. That sounds about right for this game. I think OU is solid. Love Porter Moser. Think he is a super coach. And I think they're only going to continue to get better under his leadership. Tanner Groves is still around. They've got a decent amount of talent on that team. They don't score it especially well. They do defend pretty well. And they've been efficient when they've scored. They're one of the top 25 teams in the country, both in 2-point percentage and in 3-point percentage this year. They've been very efficient.
Lead the Big 12 in 3-point percentage.
Yes. 38.2% overall for the season, I believe the number is. They also turn the ball over a lot. For a team that does not go at a very high tempo, they turn the ball over more than you would expect.
That's the understatement of the year, too. Whether 363?
Yep.
363 Division I teams. In Ken Palm's adjusted tempo rankings, Oklahoma is 345th. That is a snail's pace.
That's not great. Not great one bit.
So it's pretty obvious what their formula for winning tonight is, isn't it? You have to make a lot of threes and defend the 3-point line as well, because I think they're either number 1 or number 2 in 3-point defense in the league. So make your threes, hope Kansas doesn't make theirs, and play the game at the pace you want to play at. Play the game at a slow pace, limit the number of possessions. And if they can do that and take care of the basketball, that's their formula for walking out of Allen Fieldhouse with a win. Just really hard for them to do all of those things against a Kansas team that is so good at imposing its own will on games.
Yeah, the opposing 3-point percentage against Oklahoma this season is 26.9. That is the 6th best in the entire country. Number 6 out of 363. Really good mark for Oklahoma. I still think KU, again, should be able to win this game in the neighborhood of 10-ish points. Oklahoma does turn the ball over a bit too much. If you're KU, you know what that means? Transition offense. You know who is better than KU in transition? Maybe nobody in the entire country. Yeah. Okay? They're really freaking good when they can get out and run, especially when now, as we have seen, KU's got 5 different threats who can score. Jalen Wilson, obviously. Grady Dick, obviously. McCullough can fill it up if needs be. KJ Adams has become a legitimate offensive threat. And even DeJuan Harris is scoring the ball. And he's always been pretty good when he's going downhill attacking the basket, whether he gets to a layup or when he goes with the float game. KU's in the starting lineup got 5 guys who can all score. They can all score in transition. And coming off the bench, you know what else KU can do? Maybe not as much Zuby Ejiofor. I wouldn't exactly call him a rim runner at this point in his young career. Bobby Pettiford, really good at running the point during the fast break. Joe Yesufu, maybe the fastest player on the team. KU can get out and run. If OU is going to turn the ball over, KU just has to force. There's a lot of U's here. Kansas just has to force Oklahoma to turn the ball over, and I think KU is going to be just fine in that regard. OU's roster is nice, but it's not anything that has me like shaking, quaking in my boots. I guess you have the flashbacks to the first round of the 2021 NCAA tournament and the near disaster against Tanner Groves. Okay, well, sure. Then we'll get 11 minutes of Zach Clements in this game defending him.
That's what won them a game against Oklahoma last year.
Yes.
Clements came out and neutralized Tanner Groves. Maybe we see a little bit more of Clements tonight. But really, I think barring something really special from Oklahoma from behind the arc, a huge game from Grant Sherfield, I think they'll be hard-pressed to keep it close for the better part of 40 minutes.
Here's the other one that stands out to me, and this is where Zuby, who is actually a very effective rebounder in limited minutes, and KJ Adams, who's an energy rebounder. This is from the Kansas City Star and Shreyas Latta, their new KU beat writer. Oklahoma this year is 331st in total rebounds per game. 331st. Not great. And they are 338th in offensive rebounding. If they miss, they don't get the ball back very often. Now, if that flips, all of a sudden, that's going to mess up the scouting report if you're KU. But KU should be able to rebound, clear the glass, not give up second chance points. And again, KU will run off of misses. They will happily get out in transition after misses. I think Oklahoma's a tournament team. I do think they will get to that point. They've got some nice talent. I think Grant Sherfield is going to be the player to watch in this game, even more so than Tanner Groves. But I'm pretty comfortable KU's going to win tonight.
Yeah, they got a Kevin McCullough for that. KU does. They got a McCullough for that problem. And I think that, yeah, Oklahoma, unless, again, you get the high end of variance both ways for Oklahoma from the 3-point line, Kansas should be able to control the tempo and keep the Sooners at arm's length.
I would argue, well, I don't know if it's really a point worth arguing, but KU, the way its roster is built and the way its rotation is built right now, has someone for everything, right? Like, there's nothing that is, and maybe I'm too close to the situation, maybe you can point something out, but it just feels like there's nothing that KU cannot somehow address. Like, the other team's got one guy who's got an incredible offensive skill set. He's tough to guard. He's a good shooter. He's an efficient shooter. Okay, McCullough. Like, this team turns the ball over a lot, or forces turnovers a lot. Okay, KU has the nation's leader among power conferences in assist to turnover ratio in DeJuan Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they guard the 3-point line very well. KU's great going to the basket, and KJ Adams is hot. They like to force you to shoot the 3. Grady Dick. Like, KU seems to have an answer. Maybe they're not great at all of those areas, but they seem to have an answer for most of what other teams can send at them.
I have 2 really specific counters, I guess, in the Big 12 conference still. All that guard and wing depth for Baylor potentially playing Grady Dick off the floor defensively.
Okay.
Like, Grady Dick's going to have to be a factor on defense in that game.
That's fair.
If he's a negative factor, that's obviously a big deal for Baylor. And the other is the big kid, Eddie Lampkin from TCU. I'm not sure that Zuby may not be ready for that.
That's fair.
And KJ might be a little too light in the seat for that. So there's a couple of guys in particular, but I mean, that's an edge potentially for two teams that I think are, even though Baylor's 0-3, two teams I still think are pretty good and going to be league contenders before all is said and done. But yeah, by and large, Kansas is able to, with the pieces they have on hand, with the 8-player rotation that they've kind of settled on, they do have a counter for just about everything.
And I should say, in fairness, I'm not trying to say KU's got no weaknesses going undefeated the rest of the way. I'm just saying that they have a lot of answers for a lot of what other teams will be able to throw at them, which at this part of Big 12 play, when every win means a lot, and you might not need more than 12 or 13 to win the conference, that's a pretty good place to be. The other game going on here in the Sunflower State along I-70 tonight, or just off I-70, K-State taking on Oklahoma State. What's the number one thing you're looking for out of this game? We've already gotten to see Oklahoma State relatively up close and personal, considering they played KU back on New Year's Eve.
So there's a legit argument that Oklahoma State is the best defensive team in the Big 12. Ken Palm's numbers have KU one spot above in adjusted defense nationally. KU's number 10. Oklahoma State's number 11. They really get after you defensively. And Mike Boynton's a good X's and O's guy. He will try and force you out of the things that you want to do. I thought he did a really good job of that against Kansas in the first meets, how they built a 15-point lead. Like, talent-wise, KU and Oklahoma State, not even close. But they built a 15-point lead because defensively, they frustrated Kansas, and they forced them into some bad shots and some bad decisions, really got them out of sorts. That's what Oklahoma State's going to try to do to Kansas State in the half court. So I think transition offense becomes really important. You made the point about KU and their transition offense. They might be as good as anybody in the country. We got a texter from the 402 here on our Big O Tires text line that says K-State's better in transition. And honestly, I don't know how you weight that necessarily, but K-State is real damn good in transition.
Yes, they are.
They are really, really good.
K-State's got a lot of team speed, which helps.
Yes. And they can get out and they can run and they got speed. You know, they don't have like a plodding 5 unless, Bebe moves all right, but they can run, like Tomlin can get out and run. They've got bigs that can rim run, which really helps you in your transition game. The other thing that is interesting to me about this matchup is there's a setup here for something of an emotional letdown for K-State. They played 2 monster road games last week and they won them both. And one of them went overtime. And now they've gone from unranked to number 11 in the country. And now you're coming back home and you play a lesser opponent in Oklahoma State, a borderline tournament team. They're one of Joe Lenardi's last 4 going into tonight. Incidentally, so is Oklahoma. There's the potential there for an emotional letdown, but a full house at Bramlage will not allow that. That's where the fans come in. That's where the crowd gives you that energy, gives you that lift and says, hey, look, let's keep this magic going. Let's keep riding this magic carpet ride. So I think the energy, the building energy is going to be a factor in a positive way for Kansas State. One other on-the-floor factor will be rebounding. I think if you want to get out transition, you got to rebound, right? Oklahoma State has the best rebounder in the conference, the leading rebounder of the conference, Musa Cisse, right now. And that is going to be a difficult matchup because he's 7'1" and strong. And Kansas State is going to have to work on keeping him off the offensive glass and keeping Oklahoma State from extending possessions, getting second look threes, and being able to rebound themselves and then get out and run. That's going to be a big factor. I'll be looking at the rebounding tally as something that could be very telling, I think, tonight.
Oklahoma State Cisse for Oklahoma State. I guess I'll start right there. That's the one that stands out. I mean, similar to the KU preview, right? Like, who's the one matchup that you think, okay, you got to be able to stop this guy, or you have to be able to have a counter for this guy? I think that's probably Cisse for Oklahoma State. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too passive, too flippant about what Oklahoma State is or how good Oklahoma State can be. This doesn't feel like the emotional letdown game for me. I feel like, honestly, if there was ever going to be a game for that, it might be Saturday for K-State because
it's between this game and the KU game.
You're in the look-ahead spot. And who did we determine K-State plays in the game? Iowa State? I think that's Iowa State. That comes up after Oklahoma State, if I'm not mistaken. I might be mistaken, though. TCU, that's who it is on Saturday.
It's TCU, yeah.
They're on the road against TCU. That, to me, feels like that might be the challenging game because it's on the road. KU is just a couple days later, which is obviously the big one. That feels to me, and I mean, TCU's really good. TCU's a top 20 team. Like that feels like the real danger zone game. I guess That's why they call things trap games.
Mhm.
Like, aha, you thought that'd be the trap game, but this was the actual trap game.
Right.
I don't know. I was not especially this sounds so arrogant. I was not especially impressed by Oklahoma State when they played Kansas. I thought Kansas did not play very well. Oklahoma State's defense is obviously legit. I just, like, can you trust that they have enough guys who are going to keep up and score with you? Like, when I look at what K-State has done in the last couple of games, 213 points over 2 games, 116 and then 97 against a really good defensive team in Baylor. Does Oklahoma State have the horses to keep up with that? I don't know that they do.
Yeah, and K-State's playing with so much offensive confidence right now. It's hard to see them not, getting up into the 70s. Is Oklahoma State going to do that, barring an out-of-character three-point shooting performance? I don't think they are.
No, I would have a hard time seeing that.
We did have another text from the 785 and the Big O Tires text line. Tonight's Kansas State game is on ESPNU. The question, can you get the U on the ESPN app on your TV? As long as you are logged into your cable provider and subscribe to ESPNU as part of your cable package, then yes, you can get the ESPNU programming on your ESPN app. But if you're not a cable subscriber, if you're a cord cutter, I don't believe you just have the ESPN Plus. You don't have the ESPN, the linear networks.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part of ESPN Plus is you can't just get the ESPN channels.
Yeah, you can't get ESPN a la carte yet, and a big emphasis on the word yet, because that's probably coming.
You would think so. You would hope so. I would think if ESPN was like, hey, we're going to offer ESPN Plus, but it's going to be twice as expensive, but you also are going to get the cable channels.
I think there would be people who would do it for 4 times the price.
Yeah, I think there would be too.
$24.99 a month? Yeah, I think people would do that. And you just get all of the ESPN Plus and all of the ESPN live networks. Oh, yeah. People would do that.
Other games going on, by the way, in the Big 12 tonight, along with the KU and K-State games. There's only one other one, Texas Tech at Iowa State. Real quick thought on that game. Iowa State's top 15 in the country right now. They're the number 14 team in the nation. I've not gotten to watch a ton of Iowa State. I know what they are, obviously. I know TJ Osselberger's a good coach. Caleb Grill's been playing really well. Texas Tech needs a win. That game is going to be at Hilton Coliseum. I think I would take Texas Tech in that game just because I think they have to have it more than Iowa State does.
Yeah, it's desperation mode for Texas Tech, and I still think they're good regardless of their 0-3 record. And I'm still not sold on Iowa State despite their 3-0 start. So, yeah, I think Texas Tech wins this game.
Yeah, so those are your 3 games in Big 12 action coming up tonight. Baylor at West Virginia. You want to talk about another game where it might be loser leaves town in that matchup because whoever loses that game is going to be 0-4 in the league. That's tomorrow night, as is TCU at Texas. That's an interesting one. Yeah, I like TCU in that matchup, though. I think TCU is still the 2nd or 3rd best team in the conference. My power ranking is not changing. It's KU and then either TCU or K-State. I would hear an argument for either one of them right now, the way those 2 teams are playing. We've got to take a break here on 580 Sports Talk. When we come back on the other side of the timeout, today's What Is Wrong With You? That's coming up here on 580 WIBW.
What the hell?
Time for What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk. 2 new stories going head-to-head today. Dan, you had our winner yesterday. The deputy theft is what we dubbed that story.
Yeah, out of Washington, Snohomish County, a former deputy had been committing ongoing theft at the Home Depot where he was moonlighting as a security guard and thought it wouldn't rise to the level of felony charges because he never took more than $750 of merchandise at once. When that is, in fact, not how that law works.
It is not a case-by-case basis. It does pile up over time. So that is our current winner for the week. I'll go first with today's stories, and we're going to the town of Clovis, New Mexico, where a man has been arrested by New Mexico State Police for a package he left at the door of their facility last month. It was a bag of dog poop. It happened after police say he also had harassed 911 dispatchers. Channel 13 News in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, obtained video of the day it happened and why the suspect said that he did it. Officers in Clovis began their workday December 20th with the package left at their door. One officer can be heard on this video saying, quote, right up front, he just put bleep in the door. Another officer says, what's in there, a napkin? Dog poop. Is it really? Mm-hmm. That was the conversation as they discovered dog poop was in the bag. The man who was in the car out front, who was suspected of dumping it and was indeed proven of having dumped it, well, his name was Christian Cook. When state police then approached his car to confront him, Cook refused to get out of his SUV. The people, I don't know how they found out his name. I don't know if he told them. I don't know if they ran his license plate, whatever. But one officer says to him, roll down the window, Christian. Roll down the window, Christian. Roll down the window, Mr. Cook. Cook refused to, which forced state police to have to find out his motives while yelling at him through his car window. Cook then, taunting them back, says, crack the window. I can't hear you, bro. An officer asks, have you been taking medication every day? What would make you put dog poop or human poop in our office? According to the police report, Cook had called dispatch incessantly that morning 14 times in less than an hour.
Man, leave the 911 dispatchers alone. We are a guy in Japan, and now last month, now we got this guy. Leave the dispatchers alone.
The call, one of the calls on video went like this. Dispatch says, state police. Cook responds with, hello. Can I help you? Cook says, may I help you? They respond, no. And he says, no, you want to get your butt beat since you like beating up people with autism? And dispatch said, sir, if you keep harassing my dispatchers. And then Mr. Cook continued to proceed to have a expletive-filled rant at the dispatchers. Then the whole town will whoop your bleeping bleep for this bleep, is something he told them. In audio from this dispatch, Cook is heard repeatedly threatening and harassing dispatchers. In his last one, he says, quote, hello, y'all like to treat people like dog bleep? You're going to get dog bleep, literally. And he followed up, and he left a bag of dog bleep on the doorstep of the New Mexico State Police building.
He's got a real vendetta.
Yeah. Finally, police tell Cook he may not come back unless he's having an emergency or official business after he left poop and harassed the dispatchers. They say, you cannot come over here and put poop in my door. You cannot come here and damage something. You cannot come and harass my admin, okay? They then let him leave and sent a cop out behind him. He later came back a few days later to turn himself in after police had charged him with 4 counts of telephonic harassment, 1 count of interfering with communications, and 1 count of interfering with public officials. They looked into why he said you like beating up people with autism. He had been arrested for careless driving 2 years ago and then hit his own head against the glass of the cop car and claimed he had been beaten up. He wanted video of the incident. They would not give it to him. So yeah, he has left dog poop and harassed some dispatchers. Some of those quotes are very funny.
Yes.
Like, I'm gonna leave dog poop on your front step. Watch me. Okay, go for it. That was the whole big plan.
For mine, we're going back to the state of Washington. Been a rich fountain for What Is Wrong With You stories to start 2023. A Yakima man is under arrest for a drive-by shooting and threatening employees after police say he became enraged that a local Taco Bell was closed and wouldn't serve him. Taco Bell employees say they were closing the restaurant when a man in a flatbed pickup drove up to the window to order at approximately 2 a.m. That is fourth meal o'clock, let me tell you what. So they told the man they were closed, and the employee says the driver became immensely upset, screaming that he would break their windows if they didn't serve him food. They say he then began pounding on the front doors of the restaurant, saying he was going to break in. A few minutes after he left, the employees say they saw the pickup parked nearby. As one of the employees began to drive away, they said they heard a single gunshot. The employee called 911. Police say they were quickly able to locate the pickup and detained 30-year-old David W. Sharp. Inside of his truck, police say they found a 9mm pistol with a loaded magazine and bullet chambered in the center console, a loaded .22 pistol in a pocket just behind the driver's seat, and another 9mm pistol with an empty magazine on the rear passenger seat underneath an assortment of clothing. So he shot at the Taco Bell twice for the crime of not being open. He faces charges of drive-by shooting, DUI. Wow. The guy who showed up at Taco Bell at 2 a.m. might have had a few.
Wow.
You don't say.
Unbelievable.
Also charges of harassment, malicious mischief, and violation of a concealed pistol license.
You know what I do when the Taco Bell is closed, when I really wanted it and I can't get it? I send a tweet, not even at anyone. I say, damn, I want a Taco Bell tonight. And then I go eat anything else.
Yeah, aren't there 24-hour taco spots in just about every mid to large size city in the United States?
Yes.
Yeah, just go to one of those.
Although, to be fair, wanting real tacos and wanting Taco Bell might not be the same thing.
Yeah, very different. Yeah, sometimes you want like carne asada tacos at like 1 a.m. Sometimes you want like the Chipotle ranch chicken burrito and a couple of spicy potato soft tacos.
Man, I could go for some carne asada tacos right now.
I could always go for carne asada tacos. Yeah, guy just got mad. They wouldn't serve him at 2 a.m.
Who you got for today?
I got to go with this guy. I got to go with our guy firing away at the Taco Bell for being upset that they won't serve him a crunch wrap at 2 a.m.
See, I'm going to go with tie to sobriety here. I'm going to go with the guy who woke up and decided he was going to put poop in a bag and leave it for the state police and harass their dispatchers all morning. As far as I know, he was not under the influence of anything. However, I don't think anyone beats the deputy theft.
Some good points being made in arguing in favor of David W. Sharp of Yakima from the Big O Tires text line from the 785. Hey, we've all been there. Am I right? And another from the 785. Have you had the nacho fries?
I do love their nacho fries.
Yeah, those are really
so
good. Those have no right to be as good as they are.
No, absolutely not. Do we retain our weekly winner?
Yes, I do. I think we move the felon deputy through.
We're in agreement on that. The deputy felon, the deputy thief, that is our retaining winner in What Is Wrong With You. We've got to take a commercial break. Dan is on his way to Bramlage Coliseum. Michael Swain of Fog.net will join us next for Jayhawk Weekly on 580 Sports Talk. Michael Swain covers the Kansas Jayhawks for 24/7 Sports and Fog.net, and he joins us every single Tuesday, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for Jayhawk Weekly. Brought to you, as always, by the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence at the corner of Clinton Parkway and Cassold. And if you're looking for a place to watch the KU game tonight, no place better than the 23rd Street Brewery. Have a drink, bring some friends, have a nice plate of the delicious Bill Self, maybe some chicken parm. Great place to watch KU tonight. That's the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. As we welcome in Michael Swain. Of course, you can find his work at fog.net, and you can find him on Twitter at mswain247. Michael, before we get to the KU action from this weekend and the KU action coming up tonight, I've got to ask, how surprised were you by the way the national championship game unfolded last night? I know you got to see TCU up close and personal this year. How surprised were you that they got beaten that badly?
Well, I think if you're asking me as a fan, I'm a little surprised, but as someone that watched TCU and has watched Georgia this year, I'm not that surprised. Like, I think you saw the differential between even mid-level SEC program and Kansas, the third best SEC program, and the team that beat TCU. And then I think you saw just how much better Georgia is than everyone else. So I'm a little surprised, a 65-7. I'm a little surprised it was like that, but I thought Georgia was always going to be the team to win. Obviously, TCU, favorite, or was it underdog by 14 points? Like, I think you expected it was maybe going to be close, but that was just a beatdown.
Yeah, I'm not surprised Georgia won. I'm not surprised they won by a lot. I am a little surprised they won by a historic amount last night. Let's get to the college basketball, though. KU, number 2 team in the country. They'll take on Oklahoma tonight at Allen Fieldhouse, 8 o'clock tip. If you want to watch that game, it'll be on ESPN2. Michael, does number 2 in the country sound about right? That's where KU fell in the AP poll this week.
Yeah, I think it's probably about right. I think you could make an argument for Houston. I think you could make an argument for Kansas. Houston has kind of done everything in front of them, and they've looked really impressive. And I think you could say the same about Kansas, and really the only blip on KU's radar is that Tennessee game. And I don't think Kansas could have responded any better to the Tennessee game. And obviously Alabama has an equivalent Houston has an equivalent loss to Alabama. But I think 2's about right. I think regardless, Kansas is playing like one of the best teams in the country. And that's all that matters, especially considering how loaded the Big 12 is this year.
We were just discussing this about 10, 15 minutes ago. What to you right now is the biggest weakness for this KU team? Because I was saying the way that the rotation is fleshed out right now with the starting 5 that obviously plays the majority of the minutes, and then with what you get from Pettiford, Yesufu, and Ejiofor off the bench, which is your main 3-man group off the bench, it feels like KU has an answer for almost anything that another team can throw at them. Not that KU is perfect, not that they're infallible, or not that any of those certain elements are necessarily great, but it seems like KU has an answer for most of the things they will go up against or have come at them over the course of this Big 12 season. Is there anything that stands out to you as a clear, no doubt weakness for this group at this point?
Well, I think when they go against a team that has size on the interior, but equally length on the perimeter, I think that's when KU could have some struggles. You've seen them play well against teams of size like West Virginia by using their athleticism and KJ Adams being a versatile piece at the 5. But all of a sudden, if you're looking at a team like Tennessee, who has size on the inside, but also good perimeter depth and good wing depth, to where not only is that team going to be able to force KU to work really hard on the glass, but then all of a sudden, some of that ball movement becomes even harder to do. And that's what I think Kansas has been so good at this year, is keeping the ball moving. I think they're even better than last year's team in that regard. And I think that you're right. Like, this team has a lot of answers for a lot of different things they can face, but I think a team that maybe has that combination of size on the interior, but also enough wing depth to make life hard on, DeJuan Harris, Kevin McCullough, Grady Dick, guys like that, and even Jalen Wilson. Like, I think that's the type of team that will give Kansas trouble. And the good part for Kansas is there aren't that many teams in the country that have that type of mix, right? That's a very specific type of team. And I think maybe Houston and, maybe even Duke, if they play that game again, I think those are really the only 2 teams that might even have that.
We're talking to Michael Swain. He covers the Kansas Jayhawks for Fog.net, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. He joins us every Tuesday, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. Of course, find Michael's work at Fog.net, and you can find him on Twitter as well, at mswain247. What stood out to you the most, Michael, about KU's win over West Virginia this weekend?
Man, I think there are a few things. I think this might even span a little bit more in the Texas Tech game as well, but I think the resiliency of this group being able to fight through different things. You can look at the start for West Virginia that they had. It was pretty solid, but I think the fact that West Virginia really tried to make an emphasis on imposing their will in terms of their physicality and having a center who looks like he should be playing for the West Virginia football team. I think that Kansas' ability to respond to that and not get sucked into a physical game, going back on the other end and really sticking to who they are with the ball, shooting with Grady Dick, and as wild as it is to say, DeJuan Harris. I think their resiliency, knowing who they are as a team, not really deviating from that and allowing other teams to dictate the pace. And I think you can even go back to that Texas Tech game for another example of that, where, hey, they got up to a really bad start, and we've seen really good Kansas teams go into Lubbock, have a bad start, and watch it snowball. And I think that the team and Jalen Wilson and DeJuan Harris responding in Lubbock, scoring 18 straight points combined, I think is huge. And so I think for me, you look at the West Virginia game and the 2-game road trip, I think you're just seeing a team that, even though it's young, I think it's got really 3 leaders in McCullough, Harris, and Wilson, and guys that have been in these battles before. And when KJ Adams and Grady Dick can look at those 3 and see those 3 not be phased, I think that's just huge, because I think it rubs off in terms of just the confidence and the self-belief of the team.
How long can DeJuan Harris keep up what he's been doing offensively, specifically when it comes to shooting the ball? I mean, he's shooting 52% for the season, 51.9%, and the total numbers, he's 14 of 27 from beyond the arc. Obviously, he's not going to shoot at that clip for the entire year, but if he's going to be able to shoot it at anything like this and knock down at least a couple a game, especially if he's left open, what more can that do for this KU offense, but also just how long can he keep up at a pace like this?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a reversion to the mean coming here. That's just what I think the numbers tell you. But I think for DeJuan Harris, the thing that's so encouraging is just the types of threes that he's taking. These aren't off the dribble or really tough looks. These are ones that he's got his feet set. He's able to really not think about it, but just react and get into the shooting motion and get through it. And I mean, he's taking 2 threes a game and hitting basically 1 3 a game. Obviously, you make 9 straight, and that's going to really inflate your numbers. But even before that, he was still hitting, I think, about a 41% clip. And so I think it's, he's not going to shoot 51% all season. But I think to the type of look that he's getting, I think there's reason to believe that, hey, maybe he is able to knock down, kind of what would it be like, 3 of every 5 maybe going forward. And, something like that, where, there will be games where he's going to miss a lot. And then there are going to be games like this past week where he's going to make a lot. And so I think for him, the fact that they're good looks is the thing that's most encouraging. And I think as Big 12 play goes on, you're going to see more teams try and get up close to him, which then in return creates more space for guys like Wilson and McCullough and Grady Dick to drive to the rim. And that's why I think you've seen this team be really good, is when they get the ball moving, guys driving. And so Harris is shooting, if he shoots 51% for the entire season, I'd be very impressed. And he deserved, I think, the first team all Big 12 recognition that he would certainly get at that point. But I think just the encouraging part here is teams are going to have to react to it. I think that's just going to help make life easier on so many other guys.
And to build on that point, too, that you just made there, is that something that, one specific player might benefit the most from, or is that maybe a more holistic thing that it could be any one of Wilson, Adams, McCullough, Dick, Pettiford who benefit from that? Or does it feel like there's one complementary piece in particular who might get the biggest benefit from Harris attracting more defensive attention?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, my first reaction is say, well, Jalen Wilson, but I don't think that, Jalen Wilson is not scoring as much or being inefficient because of DeJuan Harris not shooting the ball. I think it's something that just would help the entire team. And it's not even the first drive. It's kind of the drive and kick and forcing rotations that then maybe gets someone like Grady Dick open for a corner 3 instead of maybe a contested shot at the rim or a contested shot on the perimeter. So I think it's more of just a collective thing where you have a guy that usually teams could sag off of, like we saw with Marcus Garrett during his time at Kansas. And then as time went on, teams really couldn't do that. And I think for a team like this that is so good at driving the basketball, getting to the rim, getting pretty good shots, and also passing it out to the perimeter to get some of those shooters that Kansas has the ball with space. Like, I think it just helps the entire offense as a whole rather than maybe just one individual player.
We're talking to Michael Swain of Fog.net, joining us here for Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by the 23rd Street Brewery on 580 Sports Talk. Find Michael on Twitter at mswain247. And, of course, check out his phenomenal work covering the Kansas Jayhawks over at Fog.net. One last point about Jalen Wilson, because you mentioned the inefficiency that he has experienced in recent games from the floor. I just tallied it up in the last 5 games. So that includes 3 in Big 12 play, Harvard when he played really well, and then the Indiana game. Jay Will is shooting just 38.8% from the floor in that 5-game stretch. He's still scoring the ball. He scored in double figures in all of those games. He's rebounding it well, had another double-double against West Virginia on Saturday. Why is it, do you think, that he suddenly is shooting the ball at a really inefficient clip?
Well, it's so funny you mention that, because I was thinking about this the other night. You look at what Jalen Wilson has done in recent games where it feels like he starts a game 3 of 3, 3 of 4, 4 of 5 from the field. And there's always a span either late in the first half or middle of the second half where he goes on the stretch where he kind of misses 3 straight shots or misses 4 straight shots. And I think maybe those are the moments where the self-improvement can come, where maybe other guys now being more consistent in terms of them stepping up would allow Jalen to not feel like, man, I got to go get my shots now. I got to keep shooting. You know, he is shooting the most per game of anyone in the Bill Self era. And I don't think he's one of the best scorers of the Bill Self era. And I think that probably points to, hey, at the beginning of the season, Kansas would not have started, would have been 5-0 without him going and scoring, 30 points against Southern Utah, 25 against Duke. Those were crucial performances from Jalen Wilson. And I just wonder if that now has impacted his frame of reference for right now, where, he might think, I really got to go do this, when you look at, hey, Grady Dick is, still being a consistent scorer. Kevin McCullough has really come on since the Bahamas. And I think this team as a whole has really grown around KJ Adams. And he's the guy that now is scoring double digits in 8 straight games. So I think overall, this is the point in the season now where I think you'd like to see Jalen not tone it back, because you want him to be aggressive, but maybe not feel the need to, once he misses a shot, all right, well, I got to go shoot now to get the next one. And if he misses that, I got to keep going. Maybe being able to take a step back and say, all right, I missed 2 shots. Let's get other guys going. And then let's get myself an easy look that maybe builds off of Grady Dick's spacing or Kevin McCullough's driving and passing, and maybe even DeJuan Harris creating more space. So I think it's one of these things where Jalen Wilson at the beginning of the season has to maybe have a different role than he does now. And I think it's a better, probably long-term outlook for Kansas, that he's not the guy having to go out there and score 20 to 25 every game. They can live with him being at 17 points, 18 points per game, and feel pretty good about that, because everyone else is just playing better.
Coming up tonight, 8 o'clock tip-off at Allen Fieldhouse. It's KU versus Oklahoma. OU right now, Joe Lunardi over at ESPN, I believe, still has the Sooners as one of his last 4 teams into the field in his latest bracketology. KU, obviously one of the best teams in the country. Jayhawks are 3-0 in the Big 12. Oklahoma just got its first Big 12 win over the weekend over Texas Tech. What about this Oklahoma team, Michael, would worry you the most if you're KU?
Well, I think you got to look at the 3-point line being really the big key here. Oklahoma defends the 3-point arc really well, right? Opponents are shooting 27% from 3 against Oklahoma this season. And then on the other end of the floor, they're shooting 38% from 3 this season. And if this is a game where all of a sudden Oklahoma comes out and maybe does a little bit of a similar start to what Oklahoma State had, where guys are just raining threes and having career games, I think that's if this could get nervy. But for me, I look at the 3-point arc. If Kansas is able to defend it really well and just move the ball, get some guys open, knock down a couple early looks, I think this is a game that Kansas should be able to control, because I just look at Oklahoma, and defensively, if you can make threes against them, they're not going to be able to withstand and really hold teams to under 75. And so this does have the feeling of a game to me where the 3-point arc really kind of determine who wins.
KU fans, understandably and obviously so, hear the name Tanner Groves and immediately cringe and turtle up because we all remember the first round of the 2021 NCAA tournament in Indianapolis when he nearly sent KU to an early grave that season. Is he the guy you have to watch out for with this OU team if you're looking at individual talent, individual impact? Is it him? Is it Grant Sherfield? Or is it someone else?
Yeah, I think it probably is actually Grant Sherfield because it's so funny you mentioned Groves because he's the type of player that would give David McCormick or Udoka Azubuike a lot of trouble. Well, now all of a sudden Kansas has a player in KJ Adams who would be a really good matchup for Tanner Groves, where you feel good about him being able to stick with him on the perimeter and not let him get open three. I look at Grant Sherfield, who is, averaging 17 points a game, if I remember correctly, about 47% from three. He's the type of guy that if he has a huge game can really keep Oklahoma in this. And so I look at him and I'm interested to see if it's DeJuan Harris, is it Kevin McCullough, or I have a feeling of probably DeJuan Harris on Sherfield. But then you look at Harris and say, man, can you not get 2 fouls early on? Because that has been an issue where, Harris has been getting some fouls early in games. And does that maybe contribute to Sherfield going off if Harris isn't on the floor? So for me, I look at Sherfield in that matchup with DeJuan Harris and probably say that's probably the biggest matchup keeping your eye on.
Michael Swain covers the Kansas Jayhawks better than anybody and does it over at fog.net. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Find him on Twitter at mswain247. And he joins us every single Tuesday, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for the 23rd Street Brewery Jayhawk Weekly. Michael, appreciate the time. Dan left early to go cover K-State tonight. He's a Seahawks fan, so we didn't get a chance to hear you guys trash talking each other for this weekend. But best of luck to your 49ers, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks. Sounds good. I'm sure Dan wouldn't want to say anything anyway.
That is Michael Swain from fog.net joining us for Jayhawk Weekly. We got to take one more commercial break. We'll come back, wrap up the show with the final word after this. Wrapping up 580 Sports Talk on this shortened edition of the show. And for my final word today, there's another opportunity tonight for Kansas college basketball. That's college basketball in the state of Kansas to prove that it is the best in the country right now. K-State against Oklahoma State coming up at 6 o'clock. KU versus Oklahoma at 8. I think both Sunflower State schools pick up wins today. I think both get to 4-0 and again prove where the best college basketball is played in the United States this year. And we're done early. We are done right now at the top of the hour because we've got pregame coverage for Wildcats basketball as they take on Oklahoma State. That game will tip at 6 o'clock. Dan Lucero covering that game. Check us out on Twitter at SportsOn580. He'll have the recap for you there on 580WIBW.com and on our our website, 580wibw.com. As I mentioned, I will be covering KU tonight with that game tipping off at 8 o'clock. We'll join you for more sports talk tomorrow from 3 to 6. For Dan, I'm Brendan. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 3, right back here on your home for Wildcats Athletics, 580 WIBW.